Alright, hello. So we've been doing a lot of cast on crit content on the channel recently since the Scourge League, so I figured I'd make a video going over the different CDR and attack speed breakpoints and what they entail and how to get them, because it's very important for your gearing and it's something I get asked quite a bit. So I want to preface this by saying that all this information is more or less just straight up ripped from a Reddit post by this user on screen right here. A very good detailed Reddit post, so if you want just a text form, better formatted than this video, no doubt, just check that out. I'll link it in the description or the comment section down below. But yes, so let's get right into it. So on screen right now, you'll see the different attack speed breakpoints depending on how much cooldown reduction you have on your gear. So there are just basically two important things to note here. So if you have between 14 and 51%, which is, I'd say, most of the time, unless you are very heavily invested, you'll want to have 7.57 attacks per second at most. So what I mean by that is if you only go slightly above 7.57 attacks per second, you nearly half your trigger rate. And then basically until you double that attack speed, so until you reach, whatever, 15 attacks per second roughly, you'll still be under the normal trigger rate. So it's way easier. So yes, you could theoretically double that attacks per second and still be at, your desired, trigger rate, but it's way easier to just stay at or below 7.57. However, now, if you want to be a big boy and invest and be able to spend more mods for attack speed, you can go to 52 or higher cooldown reduction, which lets you gear to 10.10 attacks per second. So that's the highest breakpoint you can get. So it's either 10 attacks per second, or obviously if you want to go real crazy with attack speed, you could theoretically double that to 20.20, and that's the same trigger rate. But yes, those are the key numbers you want to look out for. So check your cooldown reduction on your gear. If you have between 14 and 51, you don't want to cross 7.57 attacks per second. And if you have 52% or higher, you can go all the way up to 10.10 attacks per second. So basically, that means that attacks, if you manage to get your cooldown reduction all the way to 52%, you can squeeze a lot more damage out because you can raise your trigger rate by quite a bit. With the 10.10 attacks per second. Note that you don't necessarily need to hit that number exactly. I would just use that as a guide so that you know that depending on how much CDR you have, that's how much attack speed you can invest in before it starts getting bad. Because basically the key thing to note is that you just don't want to go above it, but you don't need to necessarily hit the exact number. You can just POE yourself and check how much damage you're gaining from attack speed compared to whatever other damage stat you have. Depending on how your trigger rate looks, it can be that attack speed is just way better than any other stat, so you can then obviously invest in that, but it very easily could be that crit multi or something still is higher even if you're not at the exact cap. But the important thing to note is that you just don't want to go above these numbers unless you're literally doubling them, which in most cases you're not. So how do we get cooldown reduction? Well, the most commonly used sources are the Awakened Cast on Crit Gem, which at level 6 gives you 25% cooldown reduction, and a belt or boot mod. Both the belt and boot mods can roll from 10 to 20% cooldown reduction. So that means that in order to hit the 52% cooldown reduction breakpoint, you would need both the level 6 Cast on Crit Gem and a belt and a boot mod. However, with the recent 3.16 patch, they've introduced the crit masteries, and one of the crit masteries on the tree that you can select gives you +3 to all critical support gems. In most builds, this is not actually that great, but in this case in particular, this pushes the Awakened Cast on Crit Gem to level 9, which gives you 34% cooldown reduction. This means that you only need a single other roll of 18 or higher cooldown reduction on either the boots or the belt in order to hit the 52 breakpoint. Which generally what that means is that you can do Awakened Cast on Crit and you can do the highest breakpoint cast on crit with something like a Headhunter or a Mage Blood. Okay, so we are now in Path of Building because I have some things to show you. Starting off with how you can check your trigger rate cap and where you're at with that in Path of Building, because Path of Building does a lot of this work for you. So it's very easy. You can see I have my Cast on Crit Ice Spear character loaded up here. And you can see that here's my trigger rate listed below my my skill here. So I've selected Ice Spear, which is the skill I'm doing damage with. So it currently has a 10.03 trigger rate, which is very close to the 10.1 breakpoint. But if you want even more detail, you go into calcs. So you go into calcs, and this looks very scary, but don't worry about it. You go to socket group, you select the socket that your cast on crit is in, and then you go active skill, and you select the skill you are triggering, and you go down to attack cast rate right here. So here you can see that this updates with your cooldown reduction. So currently my trigger rate cap is 10.1 because, again, I have at or over 52% cooldown reduction. So as I said previously, my cap is 10.1. And you can see my current trigger rate with the skill. So it does this, for you basically. So we can try lowering our cooldown reduction. So if we go into our skill here and we lower castle crit to below level 9, which it is now in level 6, so it only gives us 25% cooldown reduction. We can now check that it's now updated. So now my trigger cap is 7.58 as listed before, and my current trigger rate has basically halved, or literally halved, which also halved my damage. So you can see that trigger rate has a lot to do with how much damage you're doing with cast on crit, and this is how you check it yourself. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you, and it has to do with accuracy. So accuracy is pretty interesting. You can see that currently, if we go into my cyclone here, we are quick capped and we are hit capped. So if we go and we switch, so I have some accuracy on my helmet. I made a copy of this helmet without the accuracy roll to show you what happens if I switch off it. So we've now dropped 2% hit chance, but not only have we dropped 2% hit chance, there's also this new line of text called effective crit chance 98%. So what this means is that not only are 2% of our hits not hitting, another 2% of the hits are also not critting. So that's because crit rolls in POE are rolled twice on accuracy. They roll once to see if the attack will hit, and then another to see if the crit will hit. So that means if you fail either one of those, you won't crit, which is why this effective crit chance has showed up here. So accuracy is really valuable for casting crit characters, because you're not only losing 2 hit chance by losing 2% accuracy, you're also losing 2 crit chance on top of that. So this kind of doubles up. So if you go from 95 hit chance to 100 hit chance, you actually get 10% more crits rather than the 5 that you otherwise would. So accuracy is very important as well to get capped, arguably more than crit, in fact. So accuracy, important to focus on, and that is how you also check trigger rate cap in Path of Building. All right, so that's this video. Thanks for checking it out, and I will see you in the next one.